Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we are diving into a topic that is probably going to resonate deeply with some of you, or at the very least, it might help you understand a friend or a partner a whole lot better. We're looking into the psychology of not liking sports. We're going to explore why not caring about the big game is actually a fascinating psychological profile rather than some sort of social flaw. Let's get right into it.
So, picture this. You're sitting on the couch, completely silent, while literally everyone else in the room is screaming at the TV, totally convinced the referee can actually hear them. They are living and dying by every single pass, every call, every point. And there you are, just kind of waiting for it to be over. People might look at you like you're a weirdo, right? Like there's something fundamentally missing from your social DNA. But instead of asking what's wrong with you, let's ask a much better, much deeper question.
Well, our source for this, a YouTube channel called Wow Psychology, hits the nail on the head here. A lack of interest in sports isn't really about the sport at all. It's actually about how you are uniquely wired. It is definitely not that your brain is broken. It's just operating on an entirely different wavelength than that cheering crowd.
So here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1, the odd one out, 2, 4 types of non-fans, 3, the non-fan brain wiring, 4, unexpected psychological superpowers, and finally 5, redefining the game.
Section 1. The odd one out, redefining belonging. Let's start by exploring that social stigma of being the only person in the room who genuinely couldn't care less about the game.
You know, there is a reason fans go so absolutely crazy for their teams. Research from Your Tango highlights that sports bonds are remarkably similar to family bonds. They provide community, shared meaning, and a really deep sense of belonging. When people lose out on those communal connections, they can feel like they don't matter. But here's the secret of the non-fan. They don't need a broadcast to feel connected. They just fulfill this human yearning to belong in other, quieter ways. Whether that's geeking out in a niche Reddit forum, going to a weekly tabletop gaming group, or just getting lost in a really good book, they navigate isolation without ever having to put on a mask and pretend to cheer.
Moving on to Section 2. 4 types of non-fans. Which are you? Our source categorizes these individuals into 4 really distinct mindsets.
Let's see which one you might be. First up, we have the doer. Now, they don't get a rush watching someone else win. They literally need to be in the game themselves, creating their own meaning. Second is the skeptic. You know the type, they look at the commercial machine and all the massive sponsorships, and they just refuse to pour their identity into a business. Third, we've got the thinker. Their brain just craves complex narratives and strategy, making standard sports feel like a loop on repeat. And finally, the realist. They are fiercely protective of their energy, and they much prefer to spend it on their own life goals rather than cheering for millionaires.
All right, Section 3. The non-fan brain wiring. Mechanics of the mind. Let's look at the actual neurological and chemical differences here, because yes, there is hard science behind this.
So let's talk about dopamine. Sports fans get these little hits of dopamine with every unpredictable play, thanks to something called intermittent reinforcement. It's the exact same psychological principle that makes slot machines so wildly addictive. But, according to the research, non-fans often just have different dopamine receptor activity. They simply do not get that same manufactured rush from a referee's call or a last-minute goal. Their brains are fundamentally seeking reward in completely different places.
And then there's the concept of tribal instincts. This is that deep evolutionary drive that bonds groups together and makes the in-group feel special. But non-fans generally display lower tribal instincts. Their identity just isn't tied to the external validation of being part of a massive, roaring crowd. They honestly don't need the safety of the group to feel secure in who they are.
This contrast is super interesting. Where fans are often leaning heavily on external validation, those dopamine spikes, and that classic us versus them mentality, non-fans operate on a totally different wavelength. They are internally gratified. They maintain a consistent self-concept that doesn't just rise and fall based on a weekend scoreboard. And crucially, because they aren't practicing that us versus them thinking on the couch every single Sunday, they are far less likely to fall into polarization in their everyday lives. They usually prefer collaboration instead.
Which brings us to Section 4. Unexpected psychological superpowers, the hidden strengths. These neurological differences we just talked about, they actually manifest into real-world personality traits. Your Tango identified 11 of these traits, and they are incredibly empowering.
Looking at these traits grouped together, we start to see that non-fans possess some absolute psychological superpowers. Because their self-worth isn't tethered to a sports franchise, they maintain a highly consistent self-concept and really robust internal self-esteem. They are remarkably comfortable with solitude, and they don't need constant external distraction to stave off boredom. And, as we mentioned, they are beautifully immune to everyday polarization. On top of that, their entertainment isn't tied to their core identity. They largely avoid the immense pressures of adopting mainstream fandoms.
It all boils down to this fascinating formula. Less excitable often equals more mindful. Non-fans can sometimes be a bit more sensitive to sensory input. The loud crowds, the screaming at the TV, the chaotic noise, it's just overstimulating. By not relying on that chaotic sensory input for their entertainment, they actually create space for true mindfulness and calm in their daily lives. They connect with their inner minds precisely because they embrace the quiet.
Finally, Section 5, redefining the game, the currency of attention. Bringing this all together, let's fundamentally reframe what it really means when you choose to skip the big game.
I absolutely love this quote from the YouTube analysis we've been looking at. It concludes things so perfectly. It points out that protecting your energy and focusing your deep passion on your own path is an immense strength in a really noisy world. You aren't missing passion. You're just full of it for things that actually feed you. You aren't boring. You just take where your attention goes very, very seriously.
So, I'll leave you with this final thought. We live in a world that is constantly fighting for your focus, right? Every single screen, every broadcast, every advertisement wants a piece of you. The real question isn't why you don't watch sports. The real question is, how are you choosing to invest your attention currency instead? Embrace your wiring, protect your energy, and keep spending your attention on what truly matters to you. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will catch you next time.